Down this road, on a summer day in 1944, the soldiers came. Nobody lives here now. They stayed only a few hours. When they had gone, a community which had lived for 1,000 years was dead. This is Oradour-sur-Glane in France. The day the soldiers came, the people were gathered together. The men were taken to garages and barns. The women and children were led down this road, and they were driven into this church. Here, they heard the firing as their men were shot. Then they were killed too. A few weeks later, many of those who had done the killing were themselves dead in battle. They never rebuilt Oradour. Its ruins are a memorial. Its martyrdom stands for 1,000 upon 1,000 of other martyrdoms in Poland, in Russia, in Burma, in China, in a world at war. Germany in 1933. A huge, blind excitement fills the streets. The National Socialists have come to power in a land tortured by unemployment, embittered by loss of territory, demoralized by political weakness. Perhaps this will be the new beginning. Most people think the Nazis a little absurd here, too obsessive there. But perhaps the time for thinking is over. Adolf Hitler did not seize power. He was offered it just as his voting strength was declining. The politicians who made Hitler chancellor argued, we are hiring him. Their figurehead was the ancient president von Hindenburg. The communists and socialists tried to take Hitler coolly. This wouldn't last, they said. Conservative anti-Nazis took comfort from the fact that their old war leader Hindenburg, still head of state, was known to despise the vulgar little corporal.
982, Herr Reichspräsident von Hindenburg.
So, fertig? No.
Danke sehr.
Na, nun wird's fertig sein. Bis morgen.
With mock solemnity, Hitler and his lieutenants walked to the ceremonial opening of Parliament. The party's strength had been built up by revolutionary violence. They had never imagined that they could take office legally. When the old Reichstag building was mysteriously gutted by fire, Hitler seized his chance to suspend all civil liberties. His followers could hardly believe their luck. The old Hindenburg, the symbol of apparent continuity, presided as they turned office into power by acts of sham legality. In March, when the Reichstag voted to allow Hitler to govern without parliament, Hindenburg made no comment. The legal chancellor marched irresistibly into the role of the legal dictator. Hitler proclaimed the New Germany and meant it to last 1,000 years. The New Germany began to round up its enemies: communists, socialists, impertinent journalists, even Reichstag deputies. At Oranienburg concentration camp just north of Berlin, conditions were at first crude rather than brutal. At this time, the camps were run by the Sturmabteilungen, the SA. They bullied more than they murdered. From the first moment, Hitler unleashed his promised campaign against the Jews. The SA organized boycotts of Jewish-owned shops. The real point was to encourage the German people to think and act anti-Semitic as a matter of course. The outside world was horrified. But there were those, including many German Jews, who thought the anti-Jewish campaign the work of Nazi extremists, something Herr Hitler would put a stop to when he felt more secure. There was to be a cultural revolution, too. German culture would be purged of the Jewish Bolshevist taint. The books flew into the fire. Many of those who flung them were students and teachers. And as the sparks rose, the intellectuals fled, writers and scientists, to give their talents to Western Europe and America. 100 years before, the German Jewish poet Heine, whose books now went into the fire, had warned, where one burns books, there one eventually burns people. Some of Hitler's most earnest followers found new ways to show loyalty. They married or got married all over again under a Nazi ritual. The Nazis had mass support among the unemployed, but less among the organized workers. The left wing of the party wanted to start a workers' movement inside the factories, but Hitler took a simpler course. He granted the unions the May Day holiday they had always demanded. Next day, he abolished the unions. Nazi supporters were basically middle class, shopkeepers ruined by the Depression, clerks who had lost their savings, craftsmen squeezed out by mass production. These were Hitler's worshippers. To this army of those who had come down in the world belonged the small farmers, the peasants. Hitler had enlisted them during the Depression. Now he told them that their blood and their soil were Germany's treasure. He passed laws to give them safe possession of their fields, and he gave them bread. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 had bitten deep into Germany's frontiers. Alsace-Lorraine and the Saarland had been lost. East Prussia was cut off by the new Polish state. Silesia cut in two. Danzig, a League of Nations city. To every patriot, Germany could not be free while Versailles stood. Hitler alone seemed the savior foretold by the monuments of the border. Never, German, forget what blind hate stole from thee. Wait for the hour that avenges the bleeding frontier crime. Abroad, there were some who admired the way this new Germany stood up for herself.
In America, we've had many reports against your new government, and in most cases, this has caused hasty demonstrations everywhere. I can now say to you that the American people today realize that these stories are untrue and without foundation. I find that there's a new, fresh vitality here in Germany under your great leader and Chancellor Adolf Hitler, of whom I'm a great admirer. The new Germany will live, for you have the best centralized government in the world today.
In fact, the new Germany was a bundle of different interests and grievances held together by the strap of the National Socialist Party. And the buckle of the strap was Hitler.
Der Staat geworden. Der kostbarste Besitz auf dieser Welt aber ist das eigene Volk. Und für dieses Volk und dieses Volk wollen wir ringen und wollen wir kämpfen und niemals erlahmen und niemals ermüden und niemals verzagen und niemals verzweifeln. Es lebe unsere Bewegung, es lebe unser deutsches Volk.
Well, really, it was the only party that promised to get us out of the hole. And their idea was principally that that would only be possible if we developed as a nation a team spirit, a solidarity, and pulling all on the same rope instead of quarreling about petty differences of opinions in foreign politics and social politics and so on and so forth.
Was hat versprochen? Den damals.
What did he promise? Work and bread for the masses, for the millions of workers who were unemployed and hungry at that time. Nowadays, in our prosperous society, work and bread doesn't mean anything anymore. But then, it was an absolutely basic need. And this promise, which wouldn't make any sense today, then it sounded like a promise of paradise.
Es klang also wie eine paradiesische Verheißung.
All dies scheint mir wie ein
All this seemed ideal ground for a prophet to say, I will lead you to the promised land. I will deliver you from evil. Anyone who said that would be greeted with enthusiasm.
mit großer Freude zu begrüßen. Es gab natürlich auch Leute, die gesagt haben, das ist ein